All right, we're gonna call to order. So for our audience, this is a committee meeting. We do have a public comment section on our agenda, but it's really just for any questions about the particular process. It is not a dialogue between anybody in the audience. And our purpose today is to determine whether or not the one of the proposals meets our minimum criteria. We do have a member missing. He's away off island. And our other member, David Martin from the Chamber of Commerce, is no longer a member as of yesterday. He's chosen not to participate on the committee for a variety of reasons relating to his employment. So, committee. Well, actually, I guess we'll call our meeting to order. It is a little past 12:30, 12:38 maybe, 37. We do have a public comment section of our agenda. As I mentioned, if there's questions about our process, we're happy to try to answer them. But does anybody have any? Sarah?
I guess I just have one comment or question. I had submitted a letter and hope that you will consider it. I think for my client, Sandra Lundeen, next to 40 Old South Road, this location is particularly of concern to her. She doesn't feel that the application meets your minimum standards, if that's what you're deciding here today, for a number of reasons, including zoning and the ownership and control issue. So I'm just hoping that you'll look at that. I don't know that the planning board will look at location quite in the same way they look at it from a zoning perspective, which may in fact be the death knell anyway, but I don't know that they'll look at the appropriateness of the site per se. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have your letter. I think we've all read it.
Libby, I'm not actually going to respond to Sarah's comment, although I'm happy to if substantively it's necessary for the committee to get a response if there's any question about qualification. I actually just got up to ask if Roberto is going to continue to participate on behalf of the Board of Health. I don't know if the Mullen rule applies or how that works.
It really, I don't know if it applies or not, but he is not here. He left us his questions and he left us his thoughts about the comparative criteria.
Okay, so is he going to be back tomorrow? Do you have any idea?
No, he will not be here this week.
This week, okay. Thank you.
Okay, as I think I mentioned before, this is a little bit of a kind of an informal sort of a thing here. I'm trying to do notes at the same time I'm talking for minute taking purposes because we're going to have to file minutes at some point for this. So for our committee group, a couple of things. There's been a lot of email going back and forth about this between myself and town council. I've tried to share it with all of you. And one of the things that I see here is that we would benefit from more time to look at some of these issues that have come up specific to the minimum criteria and whether or not the proposals specifically meet it. But I don't know that we have that kind of time. So in the interest of that, we might be faced with accepting that both, while they may or may not meet the minimum criteria to the standards of some, meet it enough for us to conduct our interviews and ask questions and do our comparative rankings. So last meeting, I think we went through the Act Natural proposal and determined that it did meet all of the minimum criteria. And they were sort of cleared to proceed to the interview stage. So we should probably do that now for Mass Medispa. I've gone through it myself. Also, I've sent around to some of the other departments, specifically Public Works, Health, Energy, and Water, I believe, and Fire. The proposals themselves so that those departments can take a look and make sure that they don't deter, so they can tell us if they have any issues or questions about the proposals. So that's just FYI. So that's another time thing. I've heard back from some, but not everybody. So with regard to the Mass Medispa proposal, hopefully everybody had a chance to at least get through it a bit. What I did was just went through it and pretty much just checked off if I saw the document in here. It was nice that they had tabs. Thank you for that. It's beginning with, I'll just launch right in, beginning with minimum criteria number 1, name, DBA or business name, etc. I checked them off. They seem to provide that. Everybody agree? The second issue, proposed address for facility, proof of property interest, site control, etc. That is something of a question. I've gone back and forth with town council on that, and the recommendation from town council is there are questions about the site control documentation that's been provided. However, the recommendation is that we basically accept it for now and could take up whether or not we think it's adequate in the comparative criteria. Everybody good with that? Or
Libby, I agree with that. I mean, I think that I think that as it stands, there's a question about the site on at the corner of Forest and Old South Road, but they provided information about the site at the airport.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's that clearly meets the zoning requirement.
Yeah. So it meets the that site meets the zoning, and like I said, there are some questions about the adequacy of the documentation, but I think for the purposes of this process, we accept it and keep going. Item 3 is the contact information. I put off that they put down. They check. They have that. The names and resumes of all of the executives, managers, all of those people. I jotted down, yes, there was a lot of people listed in their documentation. Some of the roles are a bit unclear, but that can be taken up in the comparative. Number 5, names of persons contributing more than 10% or more of capital to operate, and description of prior cannabis experience, if applicable. Again, I didn't see anybody named specifically as contributing more than 10% or more of the capital, but there seems to be some amount of documentation, so I think we proceed and take that up in the comparative. 6, copies of articles of incorporation and all of that. I guess they meet that. There were a lot of letters of resignation that I saw in here, which I don't really know what that means, but we can get at that in the comparative discussion in the interview. 7, the affidavits certifying that the people listed do not have outstanding or unresolved criminal proceedings. I checked that off. 8, the proposed timeline and development plan. They did have one. 9, current business plan. That, I think, seems to be a bit of a question as well. There is a strategic business plan in there, so the advice from town council is accepted as meeting minimum criteria, and you can get more detailed information during the interview for the comparative. The plan for employee staffing, that was in there, checked off. A list of locations where the applicant already has establishments, that was in there. 12, a plan demonstrating ability to grow marijuana products locally and maintain a supply of locally grown product for sale. I think that was in there. Some of this was a little bit hard to determine, but 13, summary of any support of co-op and craft grower programs, if any. I think that was in there. 14, proposal for any additional community benefits, including non-monetary goals and local charitable benefits. They did have something in there. 15, copy of the cannabis control application. That was in there. 16, the traffic and parking plan. That was in there. 17, plans for exterior nuisance mitigation, water use, wastewater treatment, all those plans that we required, those are in there. 18, the proposed design and marketing options for the facility, packaging and signage, that was in there. And lastly, 19, the demonstrated willingness to sign the draft HCA, that was in there. Okay. Oh, yeah, yep. So I think we've agreed that for the most part anyway, or I guess for the purposes of this process and this review, the minimum criteria has been met by both proposals. So now we were going to review our interview format, and we do have interviews scheduled tomorrow beginning at 1:30. I sent you guys some potential draft questions and a kind of a format. And since yesterday, when I was doing this, additional information has come in that I want to go over a little bit. So so as we know, we had a couple of people with strong business backgrounds review the business plans of both groups, both proposals, and one of the recommendations or suggestions was, there was a couple of things. Should we seek to have the town provide both proposers a template that would be kind of a 10-year business plan pro forma that we give them both and have them fill it out so that we're sort of comparing apples to apples? That was a suggestion. Another suggestion was that if we think the business plans are not as complete as we want them to be, do we ask for more information? Another suggestion is, let's just ask them about their plans during the interview. So what do you guys think? Thoughts on that?
Libby, who in the town is going to prepare the pro forma format?
That's a good question. I haven't even had a chance to talk to the finance director about that, and I've asked town council, are there people out there who do this? I mean, it sounds like probably it's specific to this industry. Mm-hmm. So it could take a little time to do that.
I would tend towards not doing that. I think at this stage, getting that together, and then I think that's something that's easily massaged at this stage. I think they did both submit some form of business plan, varying degrees of adequacy, and we were we could have been more specific in exactly the information we wanted, but we weren't totally unclear. So I would tend towards accepting what they've submitted and then asking any questions we have in the interview process.
I agree.
You guys feel okay with that? Okay. Okay, so we're good with that. So the format of the interviews, this is just my own thought, that each would introduce their principles, their team, their philosophy, all verbal, no PowerPoint, no, screened presentation of any kind, just an introduction of the people who really are going to be here on island and running the business. Some questions, we talked about kind of common questions that both would be asked, and then proposal specific questions. So I wasn't too sure, not ever having done this before, what sort of common questions there were. I did look at a couple of other towns' RFQs, and they didn't really have a list of questions that I could locate. But maybe, what is your general business philosophy? Do you plan to focus your business plan on Nantucket solely, or are there other locations that you would use your Nantucket business for? Anybody have any other thoughts about common questions?
I don't know if it's a common one, but traffic seems to be a real issue with everyone else. I mean, that's maybe more in your wheelhouse, Chief, your concerns with traffic, but just with everything else we have going on Old South Road, if that's a common question or a specific question, but I feel like it's out there.
I think I agree with that, and I think there's also a difference. The sort of the initial couple months, that might be different. I think they could have an initial mitigation plan. I would also like clarification on how many customers they're both anticipating, and I think that will also inform sort of the adequacy of their traffic plan as well.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was getting at. It's like how busy.
Yeah, what are you anticipating on a daily basis? Again, that was sort of in the business plans, but not very clear.
Okay. You guys good with that?
Yeah, I don't know how they're gonna figure that until it's actually, it actually opens. All those other towns that when it opened and they had the mad rush in to get it You know, it's a 1 day, 2 day event, and then it was over. Kind of like a new Walmart opening somewhere. So, I think as long as both of them, and they both have said this in their prior meetings, that they would be willing to work with us for details and things like that. I'm not sure how much of a plan we can really make to address that. Long term, that's a different story. Like with Richmond, they had to make changes to the road. Is this something we're going to ask them to do? To turn lanes, things like that? I don't think so.
Okay. I think that answers the concern, really. I mean, I'm just trying to make sure that it's covered from that.
Yeah. I think if you feel that they have, at least initially, it planned as best that they can, and they've both agreed to have additional details, that would be fine. Again, I don't know if it's a common question, but there were pretty significant discrepancies in how many customers they're expecting on an annual basis, and I think that speaks to the long-term traffic plans.
I think you can kind of predict that too. I mean, when you're opening a restaurant or a retail store, you always take into account what's your maximum capacity for a customer to then determine how much business ideally you'd want to do. So there's got to be, you know, you can't just say, well, it could be anywhere between 0 and 1,000.
Right.
There is a gray area that's somewhat accurate.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe a common question, like something along the lines of,
Weekly customer base.
yeah, volume of customers anticipated, and it could be a range maybe, and I don't know if this is, I don't even know if we can do this or not, but I'm gonna throw it out there. Would they agree to help fund changes to roadway configurations if need be, if traffic is so heavy going there, to and from there?
I think based on the answers in the recommendation, I think that's something that could go to the select board as part of the host community agreement if needs be. And again, I don't know if it's possible, but if it looks like it is going to be an issue, that's something that I think we could address there.
So that's, I'm just,
Are you jotting them down?
yeah. I'm
Great.
just figuring it third on your door.
Yes, excellent. Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so we got a couple common questions, and then proposal-specific questions. Let's start with Act Natural. I do have a little bit of comment from, well, I had a couple. How many employees do you expect to have? There were a couple of different numbers in a couple of different places of their proposal, so they could just clear that up. Are there funding assurances binding? I think I got that from town council, maybe. Oh yeah, in season and off season for the employees. Is that it? Is there anything down? Okay, so those were my couple of questions for Act Natural. Did anybody else have anything for them?
I had a couple.
Okay.
One, they mentioned in their security plan about having amnesty boxes at the ferries and the airport. My question is how would they do that, and how would they provide security for that? The second is they mentioned supporting detection dogs. Does that include acquiring, training, and maintaining police detection dogs, or what's their thought behind that? What do they intend for that to happen? Let's see. And the other is they also are proposing having a complimentary shuttle to the downtown shuttle space. Are there any improvements that would go along with that? That's a pretty crowded location right now.
Those are good. Some of that crossed my mind too as I was looking at them. Any others from anybody? Andrew, you got anything? Rita? Henry? Okay. Sewer director had some comments on their wastewater plan. It was a little hard to follow his report, but with regard to the grease trap interceptor, he was happy to see this incorporated. He would request a quarterly cleaning report listing cleanings and inspections. The inspections would not be pre-scheduled, but a notification would be given in a 24-hour notice. The interceptor drains into a tight tank. The sewer department would entertain the option of a tight tank being discharged to the wastewater treatment facility via licensed septic hauler after testing of discharge is deemed to meet acceptable parameters. And that
Libby?
seems,
Could I interrupt a second?
yep.
Comments like these, are these something that would be handled in the, I guess, the construction permitting process rather than through this process? Because
Yeah, maybe
I
so.
don't know if a tight tank's the right thing or not, but certainly
Yeah.
the experts somewhere else in the town do.
Yeah, so maybe there probably would be a, what's that meeting that you have? So,
Well, any of these projects would move forward to permitting, they're
Yeah.
going to have a coordinated review with
yeah,
all
coordinated
departments.
review.
And there'll be conditions that are put in, likely to be put in through the planning board, through their special permit. So it's the same issue with traffic and other things. I mean,
right.
you know, they have to meet certain zoning parameters. It's not, you know, a rolling thing where we just make things up, so. But, I mean, we can certainly ask the question, so.
All right, so maybe stuff like that goes to the coordinated review, unless there's some glaring issue that anybody brings up.
Roberto was here,
Yeah,
so
yeah. Okay,
maybe we want to reach back out to Roberto to have them provide the answers. I mean, I just, like, one of them is specific for the project champion. That's David Gray, I'm sorry. But just like, that was more specific. That's, this isn't David.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so like, that's just,
all right, this is on the Mass Medi Spa
yeah.
application, so we'll get to that one in a minute.
Okay, so just thinking maybe it should be, if Roberto's not here, it can just be a list of his concerns that pertain to this committee. We can clearly
Yep.
give feedback on all of it, but it's, I guess, for reasons, right?
Yeah, he had a question for the question. The specific question I see from Roberto was, where does the expectation of 35 year-round jobs come from? Was the market analysis that conclusive, and does this include the C-suite? So that could be an application-specific question. But other comments maybe from the departments, like David Gray's, and we'll probably get some from water and fire maybe, those could be referred to the regulatory agencies with whoever gets
I would think
selected.
that, I mean, they've all expressed an interest in, you know, going green and doing whatever they can to mitigate the challenges, and all of those decisions are going to be made at that special permit, not necessarily right here.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought the question about the jobs is relevant. I'd like to see some, or hear some explanation about that.
Yep. I agree.
That was for Medispa or Act Natural?
Act Natural. All right, that was the only question Roberto gave me for
Okay.
either.
So, yeah, let me just, I think I've got everything. This is for Act Natural.
Employees, funding assurances, the security plan of the amnesty boxes, more detail on that, more detail on the detection dogs, how funded the complimentary shuttle to downtown, and the employee expectation. That might be combined with the first question. All right, any other questions we think we might have for Act Natural?
You know, Roberto's lack of a question about something raised the question in my mind. It seemed to me that Mass Medispa made a statement of they would follow all testing procedures required by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, whatever. Well, as we know, the standards have been lowered for Nantucket, to my knowledge. So what does that mean? And I don't think Act Natural was quite as specific about what they would do on the testing, but I'd like to know from both of them, how, especially if they're going to support craft growers, you know, that introduces a whole new challenge to that testing issue. I'd like to know how that's going to be resolved.
So that's gonna apply for both.
I would say I apply to both.
So
yeah.
that's maybe a general.
Yeah, it could be, yeah, that actually, let's make that a general. Yeah, good. All right. We good with questions for Act Natural? And as we go through, it's possible that we'll have more questions, but we don't know the answers right now, so we don't know the question, but that's part of the process. All right, Mass Medispa. I'll just read off what Roberto's questions were. A Board of Health member was referenced in their proposal, Helene Weld. And the question, his question is, in what capacity do you expect members of the Board of Health to work with and or for Mass Medispa? Are there safeguards in place to prevent conflicts of interest? Conflicts of interest between Board of Health members, say, and MMS or whoever, their group. Yeah. Roberto really read this pretty thoroughly. In the initial staff review, a Dr. Gilbert Fanchulo was present and was represented as one of the hands-on members of the management team, but he was not mentioned in the RFQ application. He is mentioned in the state application, but not part of the local RFQ. Is he no longer involved? If not, why not? If yes, why was he not included in the RFQ response? Fanciullo. Just capture the gist, and then I can fill it in. So I would say, everybody follow? Mm-hmm. I don't think I was at that initial staff review, so I'm not sure. Were you, Bill?
I was, and he was there.
Okay. Okay, he says there is a discrepancy between the personnel in the state application and the rest of the RFQ. Dr. Fanchulo is in the state application, but not elsewhere. Jacques Zemicki and Helene Weld were added. Is the state aware of these changes in personnel and their involvement? I don't know. I guess that's a question. I'm not sure I'm so concerned about the state application because that's not our thing. And I didn't honestly read through it in very much detail at all. Yeah. It might be a town council question.
Yeah, I mean,
if there's discrepancies.
Well, are
Yeah.
we responsible for
Yeah.
making them identical?
I think the reality is that there's been a significant length of time from the time those state applications were filed, and now it's likely things change as you go along. But it does bring up another question I overlooked for Mass Medispa. That was a conflict between their state application and their security plan. Their security plan had a statement that employees would be prohibited from being armed, yet the state plan acknowledged that there'd be persons with licenses to carry in the premises at all times. I believe it said something that I'd just like some clarification there as to if their intent is to have armed guards at this facility.
Okay.
Actually, it said concealed carry permits, not licenses to carry.
What's it called? Concealed what?
Well, their state plan said the staff would have concealed carry permits,
Okay.
which
All right.
we don't really have in Massachusetts.
Okay, so those were Roberto's questions. I think we probably all have questions about the site control issue. And the I'm just going to read some of my notes that I just jotted down. The like differences between all of the different corporate names they have in there, Mass Medi Spa, SSBP, or whatever that was, and Acreage Holdings. There's, I think, clearly some question about the connection between all of those, so we probably want to be quite clear about it. We want to know, I think, locally who exactly we are dealing with. If the town has an issue, who are we going to call and get an answer?
I think the way that was filed, coupled with the lack of the financial documentation, I think makes it a very murky relationship that we need to be careful of, actually.
And actually, I think I was mixing up things a little bit. There's the site control issue as to just exactly who has control of the Tomahawk site. And then there's the management structure and the corporate structure. Those are sort of connected, I guess, but I think we want to know a lot more about them, both of them.
Definitely.
So that's kind of a follow-up from one.
Yes, I think so. Oh yeah, I forgot I had some of these. The business plan, I think we definitely want to see the financial information that was asked for in the RFQ specifically. I don't know that we specifically saw things like a credit line, credit history, financing sources, financial records that show current and proposed sources of funding sufficient to demonstrate financial stability to ensure the establishment's solvency and successful operation with the seasonal market. I'm just reading from number 9 of the RFQ. So more specifics about the business plan.
I would like to know more about the relationship between the Executive Management Board, Community Advisory Board, internally. There are various boards. Who's doing what? The operational appears to be all off island. I'm just curious to know how those 3 boards will be interacting.
Yes. What can you just name them again?
Yeah, it's the Executive Management Board, the Community Advisory Board, and the Operational Cannabis Industry Expertise and Experience Board, I guess. They were sort of presented as boards. Yeah, it's Operational Cannabis Industry Expertise and Experience.
So how do they interact? And
How do they interact? Who's an employee? Who's purely advisory? Who's getting paid? Who's not?
mm-hmm.
Or, and I suppose adding to that, who's has financial benefit in addition to possibly getting paid.
All right. What else do we have on there? We got the business plan covered, I think.
The nonprofit.
Why is Mass Medi Spa a nonprofit, and
Who does it donate?
who does it donate
Or benefit.
to or benefit? Yep.
Who's in control of the nonprofit?
Yep.
Because don't you need, by its very nature, you need to have someone who's not financially obligated to come in? Or no?
I don't know.
What was that?
Good
Henry? I couldn't
question.
hear.
Just like,
You got to talk to the mic.
yeah, sorry. When you
Sorry.
have a nonprofit, generally, you're gonna have some sort of third party
Mm-hmm.
who's not financially interested. So like, I can't sit on a nonprofit that's
Right.
beneficial to the interests of Henry Sanford and then donate all my income to it every
Right,
year and then
right.
buy myself a boat.
I think, and I think some, right. I think some of that, again, is sort of similar to the question I had with the Community Advisory Board, Executive
Right, but
Management.
So then just like if it is a nonprofit, like generally when you set up one, you have fairly specific goals.
Right.
So what are those goals?
Right, yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
And basically, again, where's the money going?
Yeah. Does anyone know, because it seems like some of that nonprofit status is a residual of, I think, the state laws before for medical marijuana. Is that correct?
That's the way I understood it.
Yeah. So can you change that later on? Could they turn into an LLC? Does anyone know?
I don't know.
Okay.
That's kind of goes under funding,
The parent company seems to be providing,
because you asked about financing.
a loan of $8 million at 15% interest. What's the, I think we need to know a little more about that. That seems very high level of interest.
Right, and then so in number 9 of the RFQ, it talks about credit, so maybe that falls under
Yeah, probably more business plan
someone just
related.
put that as
A subcategory of business plan. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a good idea.
basically, this number 2 is kind of sprawling out.
Yep. Okay. Anybody else? I'm just going through my notes that I wrote down. I didn't really see who the manager is. They may just not have one yet. I'd like to know if their facility in Norwell, Mass. is open. I guess I could call them, but the last time I did call them, they were not open. That may have changed. One of our, I guess I'd want to know with regard to employee and staffing and stuff, we asked about employee housing. I didn't see it mentioned. Maybe it is mentioned, but I didn't see it. So I'd want a little more information about how employees would be housed.
I think as well, this might be a little bit redundant, but it has less to do, I think, with financials and the question that came up about the local principals having 100% control and 0% ownership. And the parent company has 100% ownership. So that ownership versus control, just more explanation on that.
Yeah. Anything else that anybody can think of in their reviews? So we've captured a bit for both, and we have some common questions. So Henry, if you'll email that to me later, I can fix it up a bit and get it out to the members before 1:30 tomorrow. I don't see a reason why we couldn't also get it to the proposers so they can see it, as long as they understand that these are our questions that we have now, and there may be more as after we hear from them that we cannot anticipate right this moment. So again, I'm remain a little concerned about the timing here. And obviously all of us have other things to do besides this, and we want to make sure though that we give the time that's needed for this. But I've also got a town meeting warrant to get done. So tomorrow we've allotted 1:30 till I think probably 3:30. If we decide after some period of time that we need more time, we may have to continue this. And the backup date that we've come up with so far is Tuesday the 22nd at 1:30. Will that work for everybody? Yeah.
Still 3:30, 3.
1:30 to 3:30. So as far as who goes first, that's always something of an issue. Rita and I talked about a coin toss. So we could either do that right now or we could do it tomorrow. Okay, we're going to do it right now.
Where are we meeting tomorrow?
We are meeting here.
Here.
Andrew, you want to call it?
No.
Rita, you can.
Me.
Yeah.
All right.
Move further
What is
away.
it? Heads could be mass municipal, and tails could be ag natural.
Yep.
All right.
Good. That's
Tails?
Oh wait, I don't call it
Tails.
I think you called it.
No.
I haven't flipped a coin in a while. So tails means it is agricultural.
Yeah, did that count, everybody? Is that a legit coin toss? I don't wanna be.
I haven't done a coin toss in a while.
So ag natural is going first.
Correct.
All right, do we need to discuss anything else now? So we're right now, if we can get the interviews done tomorrow, and I a little bit have my doubts about that, but let's say we do, then we would be on for providing the board, well, then, okay. Well, I forgot about this whole section. Once we've done the interviews, I think we are going to need some more time, because once we've done the interviews, we need to go through the comparative criteria.
Yeah.
And we don't really even have time for that tomorrow, unless we're going to get it done in half an hour at the end. I don't know if we can do that or not. That might,
unfair to the applicants.
and it may just be unrealistic. So we may need to get the interviews done, and I'm just talking out loud here. Stick with the 22nd as our backup date to go through the comparative criteria and end up with our recommendation to the board. And at that point, we're probably talking about a recommendation to the board on the 30th, at its meeting on the 30th, not the meeting on the 23rd, because there wouldn't be time to get that stuff into the agenda packet.
Okay, so next Tuesday, we interviews tomorrow, next Tuesday we review.
I
So
think,
we can recommend to their meeting on the 30th.
I think that's what we're talking about.
Okay, so I'm just,
Yeah.
okay, yep,
How does that sound?
that's good, that gives a week between each meeting too,
Yep, so we can think about
plus a day.
the interviews and, yeah, okay.
So we'll meet again on the third, or we should at least, the 30th will be a
I think that on the 22nd, we're
7 on the meeting.
we're going to do our comparative criteria
Yep.
and make our recommendation, finalize our recommendation to the board, get it to them that day or the next day for their meeting on the 30th.
Great.
So that means we will need to get it, I'll have my office post a meeting. We may have already, I guess we already did this. We posted a meeting for the 22nd already. I'll make sure you guys all have outlooks though on these things. Oh, except for today. Did I do one for tomorrow?
No.
Okay.
No.
So I'll try to do that, the 15th and the 22nd. All right, I think that was all that I had on the agenda. So to wrap up, our next meeting is tomorrow at 1:30. We go with Act Natural first, followed by Mass Spa. They'll each have approximately 1 hour. And then we meet again on the 22nd to do the comparative criteria and the recommendation.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Any other business?
Nope.
Unanimously adjourned at 1:20.